Welcome to the very first episode of Let's Talk Buffs. I am Mario Vitanzi. With me, as always, is the Zach Seegers. Make sure you go follow us on Twitter at Vitanzi Therapy. Follow Zach at Zach_Seegers. Zach, this is a monumental day. This is a monumental moment. We are bringing the people what they want, what they need, and that is coverage of the hottest sports story in the entire country. Not just college football, not just in the state of Colorado. We are bringing content for the hottest sports content in all of the country. What say you, Zach Seegers?
I say I'm very excited for this. I've been waiting to talk some Colorado Buffaloes. I'm glad to be doing it with you. I wouldn't want to be doing it with anyone else. And I think it's going to be a really fun season to talk about after seeing that first game. I am locked in. I think they should win the most games the CU Buffs team has won in some time.
Dude, I'm with you. I went into the game thinking I just cover. Like 20 points seemed like a lot. I'm not a betting man, but if I were, I probably would have bet the Buffs to cover because 20.5 seemed like a lot. And look, man, we know even though TCU was in the national championship game last year, they lost a lot of guys. Everybody told me, like, when I'm getting all hyped on Twitter talking about how excited I am, no fewer than 5 people reminded me it's not the same team. And I get it. But they were still the representatives in the national championship game last year. CU was still 20-point underdogs. They're on the road. The field was 130 degrees. And despite all of that, they came out with a victory. Like, just real quick, give your thoughts on that game. How did you feel going into it? How do you feel now? Like, the energy can't be matched. It's incredible.
It can't be. I can't wait to see it this week in Boulder to open up the 100th year Folsom Field, Nebraska coming to town. And I was in college in 1819, the last time Nebraska came to town. And there was too much red in that stadium. I think there's going to be nowhere near that much red this time around. I cannot wait for it. And I think I was feeling pretty confident, and I think you had every right to feel confident. You look at the last year's 3 biggest beneficiaries of the transfer portal did stuff, again, not to the level of CU, but we're closest to it. It was LSU, TCU, and USC. LSU improved from a 6-7 team to a 10-4 team. They were top 10 multiple times throughout that year. LSU goes from 4-8 to 11-3, barely missed out on the playoffs. TCU goes from 5-7 to 13-2 and playing the national championship game. I think like the ceiling could be very high here for Colorado. I wouldn't go quite as far as national championship or anything like that. I think they could win the Pac-12. I think that is absolutely within reach. They've got all the talent, and something that I don't think is being discussed enough this week is how well coached that team was. The penalties get pointed out, but that Travis Hunter interception, yes, it's an amazing play by Travis Hunter. He deserves all the credit in the world for that, but he's able to make that play because he's confident the slot guy, they're in zero coverage there, man on man.
Right.
He's confident the slot corner is going to take his man. The slot corner is confident the linebacker is going to take his man, which enables Travis Hunter to go after the running back, who's the linebacker's man. This is their first game playing together, first game in a new system. I mean, I'm blown away by what we saw.
Nothing that we saw makes sense, and it's like nothing that we have ever seen before. And I think you hit the nail right on the head. The discipline of this team, despite all these kids walking into Boulder for the first time like a couple months ago, that was kind of like my biggest fear is you have a team full of brand new players, like the most in Division I football, if I'm not mistaken. Their level of discipline, just as if you couldn't already say enough good things about Deion Sanders and that like the job that coaching staff did. The discipline of that team is unbelievable. Like, honestly, I'm expecting a 10-15 penalty type of game where they're just trying to find their rhythm. And we didn't see that. And it's exactly what you're saying. Like the way that they played every play, the way that the game transpired, they were all on the same page. There were no breakdowns in coverage. At no point was Shedeur Sanders, did it look like he was struggling or didn't know, or like a receiver was out of place. It was unbelievable, man.
It was great. And then the offensive stuff too. I mean, That's been talked about a lot, but I think the offensive line is a little concerning. I think the defensive front was a little concerning in that game. And I think both coaches, maybe a little less so on defense, but on offense, they did a great job coaching around that. I think I feel really optimistic about what we saw in that TCU game. Sorry, I should add this up the whole time.
There it is.
We haven't even talked. It's crazy. So, I mean, you could go on and on about what they did in this game. You have 4 receivers over 100 yards. The four, not only that, the 4 highest receiving yard totals for a single game by Buffs receivers in their debuts in program history. All 4 of them in that single game.
It's unreal. It's unreal. Yeah.
Dylan
Edwards. Sorry, go ahead, Zach.
I'm so sorry, Mario. I know we got to move on. Dylan Edwards, though, the true freshman running back, he's going to be in Boulder for 3 years. Unreal debut. And I didn't think he was going to be the best running back on this team. I thought it was going to be Alton McCaskill, who they brought in from Houston, former American Conference player of the Offensive Player of the Year. Man, I'm really excited to see what this running back room looks like in a few weeks.
We're just scratching the surface of what they're capable of, right? So something that Zach and I are going to do here on Let's Talk Buffs week in and week out. We're going to break down the game that we had seen, that week, and then we'll preview the upcoming game that we have. And so before we preview the Nebraska game and get into a little bit about that, we are going to give you our leaders and our dogs for the week. Now, if you're unfamiliar with what I'm talking about, this is something that Deion Sanders is doing. Deion doesn't do captains. He does a leader and a dog, because not all dogs are leader and not all leaders are dogs, as Deion likes to say. And so obviously he's already named his own. Shadur's a leader. Travis is a dog. And so Zach and I are going to give you who we thought were the leaders and the dogs of each week. And so I'll go ahead and start us off. We'll go ahead and do leaders first, Zach. And I know it's the obvious answer, but you got to go Shadur Sanders as the leader. His performance was absolutely incredible. I mean, sets a CU record in his first game at CU. And not only that, he came from an HBCU who, for some reason, people were not giving enough credit. It's like Shadur's been doing this. Is it a Power 5? No, but you know that the kid can play. And the fact that he was able to step in on the road in 130-degree heat, I don't think he made one wrong read that entire game. And honestly, he should have had more pass yards. If Travis Hunter comes down with that long touchdown, we're talking about 560 yards and 5 touchdowns. If there was just one more play. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's too obvious, but Shadur is obviously the leader for week 1.
Yeah, no need to outthink the room on this one. He was absolutely the leader of the week. I thought you saw an amazing performance from him. Maybe the best, or I don't even know if it's a maybe, the best game we've seen from a CU quarterback. And he does it in his first game in this offense with a lot of new pieces. If you go back to last offseason, when people were hyped about Russell Wilson and what it could be with the Broncos, it was like, hey, let's be patient through September, new weapons, new system. It might be a little bumpy. And of course that went on through the whole season, but people were patient through September. It was around that Colts game, things got really concerning. Shadur hits the ground running in a way that couldn't be better. I think right now he might be the leader in the clubhouse for QB3. Caleb Williams and Drake May are phenomenal prospects, and no one's probably going to catch him this year. Shador's looking like a potential top 10 pick and a QB3 guy. If he can do that all 12 weeks, especially against defenses like Oregon, like Utah at the end of the season, he's going to be right in the mix at the top of the draft.
Absolutely. And so then we're going to move on to the dog. I mean, I'm not going to say Travis Hunter because it's too obvious. He's clearly the dog, but I'm going to go outside the box a little bit. I'm going to say Dylan Edwards. And obviously he didn't play both sides of the ball like Travis Hunter. No one will ever have another game like Travis Hunter probably in our lifetimes. But what this true freshman was able to do in his first collegiate game against a team like TCU, it's unbelievable. Now, the rushing leaves a little bit to be desired. 6 carries, 24 yards, and a touchdown. And that gets into the offensive line that we had talked about, Zach. Probably the biggest deficiencies that we'll see are up front. The offensive defensive line, they have more recruits coming in next year and the year after, but it's going to be tough sledding. We're going to see, I think, a lot of games where the defensive line isn't necessarily getting pressured. The offensive line isn't necessarily moving the pile and opening up those run lanes. So I'm not going to chastise Dylan Edwards for that, but he still did punch one in on the ground. But what he was able to do through the air, 5 catches, 135 yards, long of 75, 3 touchdowns, average of 27 yards per catch. And arguably the biggest one, I know we want to think that 4th down catch, which obviously was the game winner, but that first play, the second half, when he took that little screen and went 75 yards with it, you could not have started the half off better than that. It's like, okay, you're winning in the first half. You're doing something that not a lot of people thought that you would do. You come right out. It's like, how are you going to respond? How is TCU going to respond? And CU punches them right in the mouth. Play 1 to Dylan Edwards. So no shade whatsoever towards Travis Hunter. I just wanted to think outside the box a little bit. Don't go in with Edwards.
Yeah, I think Travis Hunter, goodness, Dylan Edwards is a great pick. Million great picks. That's why I'm stumbling.
It's hard to pick one guy.
Got all the touchdowns for him. Absolutely deserves it. Travis Hunter absolutely deserves it. I'll throw out another outside the box pick. Miles Slusher, the transfer from Arkansas, is playing kind of that nickel role for their defense, kind of a third safety / slot defender. Man, he was a force on defense. I think the best defensive player not named Travis Hunter was laying the wood. I absolutely love to see it. Was an impact player throughout. They're going to be without him this week, which I think is a big loss. Hopefully they get him back for the USC and Oregon game. I don't think they'll need him quite so much this week or for CSU, but week 4, week 5, they'll need him.
Absolutely. So the reason that we didn't pick Travis Hunter is because we're going to talk about him now. He basically needs his own segment to be discussed because he's unreal. He's unreal, Zach. And if you're watching this pod, you're watching the show, I want you to realize, like, even if you're not that big of a football fan, what Travis Hunter did last week, and I know it's a small sample size because it's one game, unprecedented. First of all, guys don't play both sides of the ball. They don't. Second of all, if they do, it's limited. And third of all, they do not produce at that high of a level on both sides of the ball. It's incredible. Now, the thing that I want to discuss really quick before we get into the preview with Nebraska, Zach, obviously he played 139 of 160 snaps, 60 on offense, 79 on defense. As good as Travis Hunter is, and I'm sure he's well-conditioned because how could you not be, that's not sustainable. That is not something that he can continue to do week in and week out. And you look at a guy like Deion Sanders, who did that exact same thing in college and a little bit in the pros. I would think if anybody knows how to handle that, it would be him. Because the last thing that you want, like that Deion would want, is to burn him out so this young man can't play in the NFL at the highest level. So obviously we're not going to see consistent games like we did against TCU. So let me get your thoughts on that, Zach. Like, how do you manage a Travis Hunter?
You got to be careful with the snap count. Like, you can't lose him for the whole season. I think Deion knew what he was doing, though. This was a chance for CU to do what they did, announce to the entire country, we're here. Stop doubting us. Don't have us as 3 touchdown underdogs to anybody. And I think he wanted to go all out to get that done. I would be surprised if we see him play 152 as the final count from PFF. 152 snaps again. Maybe in like an Oregon game or something, he gets close to that again. There's no way you can do that an entire season. No one in the NFL preseason, which is 3 games, played more snaps than Travis Hunter did in that one single game. It's absolutely insane. I am concerned about it, for his health, for how the league will view him and everything. But he's a remarkable talent. You do want to use him as much as possible. I think he will continue to be sprinkled in on both sides. I hope it's primarily as a cornerback, though, because he is a top 5 pick at cornerback. I think he's a very fun, special wide receiver, but this Buffs receiving core is very deep. And then you've also got Dylan Edwards that can contribute to that. Like, Xavier Weaver is a very talented receiver. Jimmy Horn was really nice in that first game and missed a couple opportunities. Yeah. I'm curious what the depth is like behind those guys. They just didn't get an opportunity to shine in week 1. I think Javon Antonio, Cole Basha, they've got some guys that impressed me when I was there at practice.
Absolutely. So we're going to segue now. We're going to give you our thoughts on the upcoming Nebraska game. Obviously, an absolutely massive game. Nebraska has not beaten CU since 2010. I would just like to throw that out there, and then we're actually going to talk about the segment. So before we give our predictions,
17-0 lead too. Sorry, Mario.
No, they sure did. I'm glad that you threw that in there. Yeah. So I want to remind everybody about some comments that Rule made a few months ago. I hear other schools say they can't wait for today, the transfer portal. They can't wait to go out. I can't wait to coach my guys. Let me tell you that. I'm not here. I'm not thinking about anybody else but this team out here. And then he walked back his comments, right? He said all that. It was clearly directed at Prime. It was clearly directed at Deion Sanders, because Deion Sanders just came out and said how much he loves that day. And so Matt Rule, in direct response to Deion, tries to throw shade. And then I think Matt Rule saw what that transfer portal could do and what that transfer portal CU team did to TCU, and he ran back his comments. So a couple days ago, after that TCU game, he said, quote, he's won in everything he's done in football. He's won as a player. He's won as a coach. So I think everyone maybe thinks like outside, not me. Everyone else thinks like, well, this is all a show. I like how he wanted to stress that it wasn't him saying that, but then he's still the one that said it like, oh, well, other people are saying this, not me. Well, this is all a show. No, he's the most serious person about football. His poster was on people's walls for a reason as a player, because he's one of the hardest practicing, hardest playing people that's ever played the game right. So why would we think that his team wouldn't be the same? You want to talk about doing a complete 180, Zach? Because Matt Rule was poo-pooing in his little red pants, seeing what CU just did to TCU, and he was like, you know what? I gave him bulletin board material. And clearly that was not very smart, because Shedeur Sanders had bulletin board material from some random coach on TCU staff. And what did he do? Went out and set a CU record for passing. And so I'm dying to see this game. And I think it's hysterical that Matt Rule really went out of his way. It was very complimentary of Deion, despite the fact that a few months ago he was throwing shade at comments he made and his whole process. So I'm going to let you take it from here. I'm just going to give my prediction. I think we're going to see a 34-17 game.
I love it.
But
I love it.
Obviously.
I love 34-17. I have to think on my score prediction here in a second. It's funny to see Matt Rule walk it back after being critical of how Prime recruited. He also said in that statement, I think a little later on, that CU looked like a top 10 team in the nation. He said, oh, they'll definitely be ranked. They should be top 10. Only one AP voter put them in the top 10. So Matt Rule thinks very, very highly of that CU Bots roster. Meanwhile, he went 0-1, and frankly, Nebraska looked embarrassing. They were kind of the laughing stock of, I forget if their game was Thursday night or Friday night, but it was one of the earlier games. I remember they were the laughing stock all over Twitter, all over TikTok the next day for how they fumbled that game. Meanwhile, Colorado is looking like a top 10 team in Rule's eyes. Maybe you should have used the transfer portal more. Again, LSU, TCU, USC, it's already been proven to be very effective. Prime just did it better. The one thing is, though, I don't know if Rule could, because not many people are Coach Prime. And for the way Prime gets,
and not many people want to go to Nebraska, Zach. Like, let's be honest. Would you rather go to Boulder, or would you rather go to Lincoln? It's not the 90s anymore. Nobody gives a shit about Nebraska.
Exactly. And for all the ways Deion Sanders is stereotyped and the players he brought in have been stereotyped, which program is the one having a player arrested days before the first game because he's breaking into stores? Nebraska, not CU. CU's players have been model citizens since arriving in Boulder. I don't know. I really think CU waxes them. I'm going to say 41. I think Nebraska's corners are unathletic, or I shouldn't say unathletic, but relative to CU's receivers, maybe unathletic. They are nowhere near TCU's. TCU has a cornerback, Nate Newton, who got dogged by CU's receivers.
And Newton is one of the better corners in the league right now. Like, make no mistake about it.
in the All-American discussion, will be drafted very highly in the near future. Dominated by the bus receivers. Nebraska's got no one like that on defense. They also, TCU's got a very talented defensive tackle who's NFL bound. Nebraska doesn't have those bodies. I think CU's going to body them in this one. They know how to coach around the trench problems. I think they're going to adjust well on defense. They've got a good defensive coordinator in Coach Kelly. Let's go 41-10. I'll one-up you just a little bit. 41-10.
Lord have mercy. I hope that yours is right over mine. I hope that when we do this show next week, you're bragging about how your score was closer than my score, and I will gladly eat crow. I'm going to be honest, man. I have a lot of people ask me, because everybody knows I went to CU. I rep CU stuff all the time, even the last few years when it's been embarrassing. It's like, that's my school. That's my alma mater. Like, that's my former home. And I'm always going to love this team, no matter if they're the laughing stock and like the bad news bears, or if they're the prime-led CU Buffs, who is the hottest story in the country right now. Like, I'm always going to support them. But there's still that deep-seated fear. It's like, yeah, I know we beat TCU, but what if it's a fluke? Like Nebraska is still tough. It's still Nebraska. That's how I felt going into this show. But now I'm getting myself tight, okay? And I'm hearing you talk about how bad Nebraska is, and I'm hearing you solidify how good CU is and how they're going to make adjustments. So I have no more doubt, okay? I'm all in. I'm all aboard. I cannot wait for Saturday. They have sold out. In fact, they've sold out the next, I think they said 3 or 4 home games, which is absolutely incredible because, man, those kids up in Boulder, Zach, they deserve a good team. I mean, I'm sure you remember they were still filling the stands last year, and they were an embarrassment. Like, they were a team that would have lost to JUCOs. They were a team that would have lost to a few high schools. And those kids, those students, all those fans still showed up and showed out. I cannot wait to see what it looks like on Saturday. Hopefully there is little to no red throughout the stadium. I pray that CU fans were not selling their tickets despite how much money they could have made off of them, because it is going to be an absolutely electric atmosphere. What else you got? Take us home.
Absolutely. I can't wait to be there. I'll be in attendance. And key to the game, stop the run. Nebraska's quarterback can't throw the ball. I think at this level, load up the box, stop that run. If you can do that, I think they roll by about 41-10.
Yeah, I think like you say, key to the game, you're slowing down their quarterback, right? You slow down Sims, make sure that he's not running, because that's kind of his strong point. Let me pull up his stats here. Jeff Sims, 11 of 19, 114 yards, a touchdown, which was actually after like a botched trick play that kind of worked out to their favor. Like, that was the only touchdown that he threw. 3 interceptions, including the one that ultimately led to them losing the game, but 19 rushes for 91 yards. So clearly a good athlete, clearly a guy that can get out of the pocket and run and make plays happen. So as long as they're able to rein him in and not let him hurt them with his legs, Nebraska doesn't have any receivers. Like, they're not deep at receiver. I don't know how they're going to score points on CU unless they get their run game going. So that's all I got, Zach. Take us home, man.
Yeah, Travis Hunter licking his chops like Patrick Beverly out here. I cannot wait for this game. Go Bucks. Find us on Tuesday right here on all the social medias, That Good Sports. Let's Talk Broncos, wherever you want to find us. Yeah, I forget what time we decided, but we'll sort that out. Find us here.
We'll be here when we're here, and we will let you all know when we're here. I'm Mario Vitanzi. That is Zach Seegers. Thank you all so much for joining us, and Skull Buffs!